I'm in a very happy mood today, so I thought I'd record a video. But first, let's make sure our angle is not this. Alright, hopefully this is better. So today we'll be talking about architecture school updates as a junior. Yes, I'm an adult now. It's new for me too. Alright, so while we do this, we're gonna do my makeup and we're gonna chat about life and architecture. So now that I am 21 years old, welcome for those of you who are new. Architecture school, 3 years in, as someone who came here with no prior knowledge besides the knowledge of, ooh, I like this, my aunt's an architect, I want to be an architect. Literally, that was like my whole thing. And I've learned a few things. We're gonna be using my new view palette, but I've learned a few things. And one, it is that you should just come to college knowing how to be an architect. And first, I want to talk about that. So when I first got here, as every person might think when they're in high school, you think, oh, like I'm gonna come here, they're gonna teach me all these things, and then I'm going to like gradually get better. No. Architecture, as I've learned, is basically a self-taught major. You come in and they expect you to know a few things. They don't tell you they expect you to know a few things, but they expect you to know something about architecture. And then they kind of just start giving you deadlines. They're like, so I think the first thing I did was they asked us how to draft like a perspective or an axon or something. And it was very jarring for someone who barely has sketching talent. Yes, I know I want to be an architect with barely like sketching talent, I know. But it's very hard for someone who like you come in and you're like, oh, I'm going to learn how to do all these things. And then you get here and it's very much like you should already know how to do these things. And a lot of people do. Like a lot of people that I know in this major have either lived in New England their whole lives and they learned these skills in high school, or you're someone whose parents an architect, so you already have like years of like your parents' work and like you watching them and things like that. And so for me, as someone who wanted to be an architect but had no practicing knowledge, it's been a time. We all have to develop our own styles. But the issue with developing your own style as an architecture student is that almost everyone's style is exactly the same. And if your style isn't like their style, then you will probably never find like a student who wants to work with you. And in a major where everything is like group project based, it's really hard not having people want to work with you because your aesthetic isn't similar to theirs. Hi, that is me. So my work is very like collage, cartoonish aesthetic, whereas everyone else is very realistic, rendering vibes, and I just don't know how to do that. So I have come to the wheelhouse of kind of just doing what I'm good at instead of just trying to do what everyone else is doing, because I know I can't. And instead of just failing at something that I know I can't do, I'll do what I'm good at, and then I can try to learn those skills like over the summer. So that's another thing. You need to practice your like everything over the summer or when you have free time, because architecture school is very busy. A lot of architecture students actually become very cliquey. It doesn't really matter what school you go to. I've noticed there's a lot of cliques in almost every architecture school. Mind you, this is from a New England perspective. Like all the schools I know up here are very cliquey. And it's not like per school. It's kind of like per skill set or where they're from, like what your similar backgrounds are. And if you don't find that clique in like the first week, you're probably not gonna have a friend group in your major, which is also kind of stressful. Like in my grade, I have 2 really close friends, one of which who transferred schools. So I have one really good friend in my major, and we are never in the same class. So we're always kind of just working with other people on projects. And it can be pretty like disheartening and upsetting because obviously the other cliques are about like 6 to 9 people, and so it's also like hard in that extent. And I don't think that's something a lot of people know about architecture school, just because like why would you, like why would they tell you that this major is something that's very clique oriented? And for me it's kind of stressful in the sense of like a lot of these people are creating cliques and groups, not realizing that when you get into the workforce you won't have that. There's no guarantee that you and your friends are all going to get hired at this one firm, or you're all going to magically be able to have your own successful firm and like never worry about working with other people. You're always going to need that flexibility. And in architecture school, professors really try to hammer in this whole thing of like, oh, we're gonna let you choose your own groups, we're gonna like be nice and like, allow you that fluidity. In allowing you that fluidity, there comes this issue of people only working with their friends. Even if their friends don't have a good skill set, they're like, oh, I can do whatever I need to do for my friends' work to also succeed. Whereas, like, if you're working with someone you're not friends with, it's an actual, like, very more professional working relationship because you don't know each other as well. You're not friends. So you're able to be very constructive and, like, work really hard. And I think that's another issue. Another issue that architecture schools have is a lot of students, when you make a complaint in your year, like I think my grade, they complain a lot. But we've had like students make complaints about how we aren't learning certain skills. It's kind of like, hey, you should know how to draw. You should know how to use all of these render programs. And it's not really like taught. And now what my school's starting to do is for students coming in now and next year is they're providing them with kind of like these classes. But for us, it's kind of uncomfortable to want to take classes like that but not be able to, especially those of us who don't have the skill that everyone else has. And my school's pretty much like an accelerated university. Like the things my friend is doing in her design 6, design 7 is very different from what I'm doing in my design 5. Like my design 5 is significantly different from her design 7 because of the way our schools learn. And I'm using that as an example because she's learning at a school in Florida, whereas I'm learning at a school in Massachusetts. And it's really interesting to kind of see how differently paced our schools are. And even if my number for our design courses is lower than hers, we are still doing a lot more and we're doing a lot of different things. So I go to a tech school. If you watch this channel, you already know that. But everything is super, super regimented here. So if you're someone who's really artsy, it's really hard to be artsy because it's like across the street is the art school. And so people kind of like say, why don't you go to the art school across the street if you're really artsy? So there's like this fine line in the architecture major where be artsy, but also be very regimented artsy. Be artsy, but make sure that your work fits into everyone's aesthetic, you know? And so that's another thing I've learned. It's kind of like fitting in architecture is it's very much fit in, or like you will not have friends. You might have teachers who still prefer your work and like your work because it's very different from other students. And it like my work isn't the most beautiful as like compared to other people, but it's very detail oriented. I'm very much someone who focuses on like what the community is going to experience in my building and like how they walk through it and what they see and what they feel when they're in the building or around the building. Whereas some people, it's much more like, I want my building to be pretty, and even if it's not functional, it looks really good. And so like that's kind of like the difference I've been seeing. There are 2 types of students in college, the detailed ones and then the ones who are like, it's pretty. And I'm like, is it functional? No. And it's like, why don't you have an elevator? Oh, there wasn't space for an elevator. And I'm just like, you're going into the actual field and you need to have certain things, you know? All right, another thing is internships. My school has 2 mandatory internships for architects, and I got my first one, which was really nice. I really liked my first one. And right now, since we're in a fun time zone right now, it's really hard to get internships because a lot of places don't want to hire a student. And if they do want to hire you, a lot of places don't want to pay you because hard life right now, okay? Things are hard. And I was able to actually find an internship, I think like 3 weeks, almost a month ago. It's a design internship, so it doesn't deal with architecture per se. It's more like drawing and like editing things and making PowerPoints, and like it's not architecture, but it counts. I've heard, apparently, according to my advisor, this counts. And I don't hate it. I don't get paid for it, so it's not bad that it's not like a very heavy-handed, difficult job. If it was, I'd be like, why? Yeah, we're not putting on any foundation, concealer. I think you've all noticed at this point, but for those of you who haven't, we're not doing that. But yeah, so I want to say, for those of you who want to do architecture internships, you need to not give up after like the first no, or even like the first no response, because sometimes firms will not get back to you until after the deadline that you might need your internship by. So you just got to keep applying. Like last year, I think I applied to around 36. I made a spreadsheet and I got 2 to 3 interviews. I think 3 interviews, and then I got hired for 1, you know? And obviously, like, if you're not prepared for that and you apply really late, you're not going to get a job. And that's going to be one of the most stressful experiences of your life, because you're going to feel like you're set back, or you don't want to tell your friends like, hey, I didn't get a job. If all your friends get a job, it's a lot. It's a lot of emotion to like go through, you know? So I will just bring that up. So start applying early. I think I started applying 3-4 months early, before like the deadline. You should always apply at least 4 months early. Sometimes I applied too early. Like this semester, I started applying in January, which a lot of people are like, oh, you're applying so early. But even though it's not an architecture internship, I still was able to receive an internship because I started applying really, really early. This semester, because of life, I did end up applying to significantly more places than I have in previous years. And since I'm trying to do my internship in Florida, I don't really have the sort of resources that I would if I was doing it up here. Up north, there's significantly more internships. So if you're someone who's really struggling down south to find an architecture internship, there's significantly more up here. So that might be an option. It might just be easier for you. But it was very like difficult to find one in Florida, so I started looking at remote internships, and that's how I got my current internship, you know? So definitely the internships, don't get discouraged super easily, because it's really hard to do. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of cover letters. It's just so much more work. I think this year I'm probably almost at like double the applications I sent out last year. And I guess this is the final thing. I've mentioned this before, but money. You need so much money. It is a major where you will spend at least $100 like a week, depending on how in-depth your work is. Like my freshman year, I feel really bad looking back at my first year, because I feel like my first year work is tremendously bad. My work now isn't like amazing. I'm not gonna claim that it is, but it is tremendously better from where I've began. And it's kind of like, if I had put as much effort in my first year as I do now, my work, although probably not as good as everyone else's, just because a lot of people came in with like skills for drafting and stuff like that, I feel like my work would have been a little bit better. And I feel like that's something you also should know. Like, don't slack your first year, because everything goes into your portfolio. Like everything you do goes into your portfolio. Obviously you can curate it to like the better stuff, or so you can like the really bad stuff you don't have to put in there, but a lot of everything you do from freshman year to like now and like onward is going to go in that portfolio, and firms are going to judge you based off of that. So for me, it's really like hard looking back at my old work and being like, ooh, no. And then looking at my new work and being like, yes, this isn't as good as everyone else's, but this is significantly better from where I used to be and where I am now. So I do think that's something you should all keep into account, because it's going to come back and haunt you in the future when you're looking for jobs. All right. So last two things are save a lot of money. I already said that, because you're going to be spending a lot of money on materials. You're going to spend a lot of money on maybe laptop repairs, because my laptop right now, dying. I think it shuts down like almost every few renders or so, because I do a lot on my laptop, because I have my YouTube channel, so I'm also exporting. I have so much stuff on this computer. So please back up your stuff as well. My friend, when she was getting her laptop repaired, she like almost got her computer wiped and she had nothing saved. So be ready for that as well. And so my last piece of advice is please try to be cleanly as an architect, because as an architect you have so much waste. All of your projects that you make by hand or you draft, a lot of them you're never going to use again after you scan them in and you have them for your portfolio. Like, you never touch those things again, and they kind of just like sit in a corner. Like, mine is at a storage, like my mom's friend's house. He stores my work for me because I'm not from up here, and it's a lot of stuff. And I'm thinking now it's like the process of, as a junior, how am I going to get all of that stuff at his house to Florida, you know? And so it's a lot. Architecture is a lot. And as a junior, it's a lot. One more year. I have one more year and then 2 years of masters. If you guys want to hear about my master's search next year, I can do a video on that. I have about 8 schools I'm interested in, and then I think 2 backups. So I can definitely do a video on like architecture masters. For those of you who are interested, I'm trying to do a master's in historical and research architecture, because since I'm very detail oriented, those 2 pieces of architecture fit really well with me. And even if my skill level is not as good graphically, I can still do those 2 paths of architecture. So if that's something you're interested in hearing more about, I can definitely do a video on that. I don't really do my little architecture updates anymore, just because I feel like people don't care as much. But I do know, like, for some people going into architecture school, maybe as a first generation or things like that, it's really daunting. And I just kind of want to share my experience and answer anyone else who might be wondering about experiences of someone like that and how architecture school's gone for them. And wow, I look nice today. Okay. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.